so much for inviting me to this conference. It's so exciting. Everybody's so nice. I'm learning so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. So thank you for inviting me. Today we're going to take a Sephardic journey. A journey from Spain to the Ottoman Empire and Morocco. And I'm going to talk about Sephardic music, culture, a little bit of history. I'm going to sing some songs for you. I'm going to play some recordings for you. My only regret is that my ensemble of 6 other members of Flor and Kanela aren't here with me. So I feel much more supported with my fellow musicians with me. So it will just be me and my Rick and some recordings. Okay, so first I wanted to give you a brief history of Sephardic culture. What does the word Sepharad mean? Who are the Sephardim? So Sepharad is the ancient Hebrew word for Spain, and this presentation will trace the cultural and musical history of the Sephardic Jews, including musical examples from their expulsion from the Iberian Peninsula, that is Spain and Portugal, during the 15th century Inquisitions, plural, there wasn't just one, to the eastern and southern Mediterranean, Spanish Morocco, to the south of Ottoman Empire in the east. Salonika, which is the modern Greek city of Thessaloniki, Istanbul, and Izmir, these 3 urban centers in the Ottoman Empire, were the centers of Sephardic life, culture, and music for 500 years. And in fact, Salonika, or Thessaloniki, as the Greeks call it, was called La Madre Israel, the Mother Israel, or La Strela Israel, the Star of Israel. So it's really interesting to think that it was Salonika during the Ottoman Empire that was the Mother Israel, the Star of Israel, for 500 years. And the star, the center, the heart of Sephardic Jewish culture. There were 32 synagogues in Salonika, which is pretty amazing. The most common language was actually Ladino. There was more Ladino spoken than Turkish, and I'll talk about the Ladino language in a moment. Has anyone ever been to Salonika, Thessaloniki? Has anyone been there? Have you visited? Where is it? It's in Greece. It's in the north. It's in the north. It's a very, really fascinating, special, to me, sacred city. It really is a sacred city with an interesting and sad history, of course. Ladino is the language that the Jews who lived in Spain at least since the 1st century. Some scholars, and I'm not an historian of Sephardic culture or Jewish culture, I'm not a historian, scholars trace the Jewish presence in Spain, some of them earlier to the 1st century, but it's generally agreed that after the destruction of the temple, the Jews from Rome went to what is now Spain. So there's a presence at least since the 1st century. The Jews of Spain spoke Spanish. I'll talk more about Ladino, that language, in a moment. The cultural and music life of the Sephardim was and still is very rich, although it's dying. That's why I'm here, to share it with you and to educate you all and share the joys of Sephardic music and culture. So I just want to give a little bit of an historical background, not too much history. Again, where do we get the word Sephardim? Because Sepharad was the Hebrew word for Spain. And the Spanish Jews lived in Spain through its tumultuous history from at least 1st century up until the culmination of the Inquisitions in 1492 in Spain and in Portugal. Now, the history of Spain is complex.
Sorry.
We'll get to that later. The history of Spain is complex and varied. Of course, the Jewish community was persecuted by various leaders, kings, queens, conquistadors. The first were the Visigoths. They lived for a few centuries, kind of mellow, sort of peaceful, and then the Visigoths came in and they persecuted the Jews. And if you know anything about the history of Spain, it goes back and forth, and it's very layered and very varied of different Muslim rulers and Catholic rulers, Christian rulers, Muslim rulers, and the Jews and the other, I'd say, minority populations in Spain were caught up.
That was not me.
Were caught up in.
I didn't do that.
Could you maybe close the computer? Thank you. We're caught up in the various power struggles, wars, dynastic wars, and persecutions. I'm sure you all know that the Inquisitions of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella culminated in 1492. And at that point, in 1492, as you all know, there was an edict expelling the Jews from Spain. But what's interesting to me in reading about this and learning about the history of the Sephardim is that the Inquisitions, which started actually before the 15th century against the Jews and the Muslims, were originally to convert the Jews and Muslims to Catholicism. But the Inquisitions in the late 15th century, from the mid to late 15th century, weren't about persecuting the Jews, but it was the conversos, the Jews who had ostensibly, outwardly converted to Catholicism, but secretly, or not so secretly, practiced Judaism. So there were really layers of inquisitions against the Jews of Spain and Portugal and the Iberian Peninsula. So Jews were faced with either convert to Catholicism, leave, or be tortured and die. So many left, many martyred themselves for their faith, and some said, okay, we'll convert. So outwardly they converted, but they still practiced Jewish rituals. For example, they went to church on Sunday, but Friday night said prayers at home. And Saturday day said prayers at home, special prayers, right, in Hebrew. They baked challah, the braided bread. They would light candles on Friday night. They had a mezuzah placed at the bottom of the statue of the Madonna in front of their home. So when they would touch and kiss the Madonna's foot, they were really touching and kissing the mezuzah. The Inquisitors would, and they really did this, the Inquisitors would go around to the Jewish and Muslim neighborhoods trying to smell pork, see if there was pork, you know? And the Jews and Muslims would have some pork fat, and they would put it in a pan, in a skillet near the window, and make sure that bacon smell was wafting through the window. So the Inquisition got knowledge of this. They became hip to this because, of course, there were a lot of informants and things like that. And so really in many ways, the harshest and most virulent and long-lasting inquisitions were against the conversos, the new Jews, or we might call them crypto-Jews. They used to be called marranos, but that's a pejorative term. And actually, you might not know, but the Inquisitions followed the Jews who left Spain and came to the New World. There we have legal documents of trials of inquisitions in the Americas. And people, conversos, Jews, new Jews, who were killed, jailed, tortured in the New World, in the Americas, by the Inquisitors. So they followed us to the New World. Also, it might be interesting for you to know that some of the conversos, some of the Jews who left Spain didn't go to the Ottoman Empire. Most went to the Ottoman Empire, which is now Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, former Yugoslavia. Also in the south, they went to Morocco. But, as I recently learned, there were a number of Jews who, they didn't have a homeland, they sailed to the New World and to the Caribbean. There's a very old Jewish community in Curacao, and we even have records of Jewish pirates. There was a well-known Jewish pirate, his name was Rabbi Jacob the Pirate. Nice gig if you can get it, right? So, again, most of the Sephardim went to the Ottoman Empire, North Africa, but the Jews who are from mostly Portugal, whose origins were Portugal, came to Europe, mainly to London, Amsterdam, and Vienna. But there were some Jews who, were merchant. They were doing merchandising across the seas, right? And there's some really interesting work, histories about Jewish pirates. Who knew? So cool. Anyway, of course, when the Sephardim departed or were forced to leave Spain and Portugal, they took with them, of course, their religion, their rituals, their food, their language, Ladino, and of course, their songs and their music. A little something about the Ladino language. The Ladino language, which is basically older Spanish, I'm okay with saying medieval Spanish, but some scholars don't like that. It's old Spanish. It's known under many other names: Judaismo, Yahudice, Judeo-Espanol, Spaniolit, Hispaniolica. Today, it's acceptable to say Ladino, Judeo-Espanol or Ladino, and the most common term for that. Spanish, spoken by the Jews of Spain and Portugal, still spoken today, is Ladino. So it was the vernacular language of the Sephardic Jews, and it's actually sort of a melting pot of a language. Most of it is Spanish. The syntax is from medieval Spanish, but the vocabulary is a mixture of Spanish and Hebrew, Aramaic, Arabic, Greek, and Turkish. The amount of foreign vocabulary depends on the local linguistic influences of where the Sephardim settled. For example, there are most Castilian words in northern Moroccan Ladino called Hakatia. So the Jews of Morocco, they call their language Hakatia. It's closer to, it's more like Castilian Spanish. It's very interesting. In the 1920s and the 30s, forward a little bit. I want to talk about the Jews in the Ottoman Empire and the early modern Republic of Turkey. So the communities prospered culturally and economically in the Ottoman Empire, in part or largely because the Ottoman law allowed ethnic minorities to continue as an independent ethnic unit. But of course there was a dime, a tax. So they could, the Jews, the Greeks, Armenians, could stay, they could remain ethnically, religiously, culturally Jewish, Armenian, Greek, but they had to pay a special tax, the dime. So this enabled the Jewish community to preserve their religion and traditions and culture, their language, and all of the rituals connected to their cultural heritage. As I mentioned, the three largest Sephardic communities in the 19th and 20th centuries were the urban centers of Istanbul, Salonika, which is now known as Thessaloniki, and Izmir. In Salonika, for example, at the beginning of the 20th century, there were approximately 80,000 Jews. In Istanbul, approximately 50,000, and in Izmir, approximately 20,000. So in the 1920s and 1930s, I want to focus on the Ottoman Empire now, the Sephardic Jews of the Ottoman Empire. Turkish nationalism encouraged, forced, pressured Jewish and other ethnic minorities to speak Turkish and abandon their ethnic language. So that was when the language, the use of Ladino started to fade. It was in the 1920s and 30s, at the beginning of the Turkish Republic. So there was a well-known, widely known phrase, Vatandash, Türkçe konuş, citizens, speak Turkish. And that was part of the propaganda of the new Turkish Republic. Children who heard their grandparents, their grandmothers, their grandfathers speak Ladino were ashamed to speak it, even at home, because they were afraid they'd have a Ladino accent in Turkish. Okay, so we're familiar with this losing of language because of assimilation and not wanting to sound different, not wanting to sound like your home country, not wanting to sound like your grandmother or grandfather, right? So today, it's rare to hear Ladino spoken. It's sadly very much a dying language. People in their 70s and 80s and older speak it, but their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, for the most part, do not. For the most part, do not. The biggest Sephardic community, there are two big Sephardic communities in the United States. One is in Los Angeles. There's a large community for the roads, and also in Seattle. So I've heard Ladino spoken in Los Angeles, in Seattle, in neighborhoods in Israel, Jerusalem, and Bat Yam, and in Turkey, of course, in Istanbul. And I'd like to say that at the University of Washington, Seattle, they have a very vibrant, relatively new, vibrant, strong Sephardic studies program where they are racing against time to preserve the Sephardic culture and language. If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have studied ancient Greek and Latin. I'd be like, oh my God, I would be at University of Washington, Seattle, studying Sephardic culture and language and music. So if you have children or grandchildren or any relatives who want to get into this, want to learn about this beautiful language and culture and music, University of Seattle, Devin Nar, just read about it. What he's doing is really miraculous. Ladino music has also changed its role in the Jewish community from the beginning of the 20th century. And I want to, again, focus on the Ottoman Empire. Little by little, it lost its function inside the community in traditional rituals of life cycle and moved to other contexts, such as commercial recordings and performances. So the recording industry became very big in Istanbul at the beginning of the 20th century. This new medium of music distribution, commercial recordings, exposed people in the Ottoman Empire to Turkish, Greek, Arabic, Armenian, and European music. Jewish musicians were a big part of this industry. A large number of Ladino recordings were released. Non-Jewish artists also recorded the Jewish repertoire, Sephardic repertoire, in Salonika. In the 20th century and after, the main Sephardic musical stars were Rabbi Isaac Al-Ghazi and Chaim Effendi. Those were big names, and they were both, of course, Turkish Jews. In the beginning of the 1940s, Victoria Hazan, you might have heard of her, and Jack Meyesh, again, Turkish Sephardim, became very popular. The more local songs and music became available, accessible and popular, the more we can find Ladino music and songs that are borrowed from the local folk Greek and Turkish traditions, such as Smirnaica, which is a wonderful genre of Greek blues that started in Smyrna, Rebecca, another genre of really cool Greek music, Turkish şarkılar, which are like dance songs and other folk music, tangos, foxtrots, French songs and Italian operettas became popular. These were popular tunes of the time. And as we heard about earlier, the contrafacta phenomenon, this also occurred, of course, in Sephardic music. So the new texts of tangos, foxtrots, Smirnaica, Rebecca, French songs, Italian operettas, the new texts were in Ladino. And there are also examples of such songs with the traditional language, maybe Greek, Turkish, and Ladino. So I'm talking about the Ottoman Empire and the contrafacta and part of the evolution of Sephardic music. And I'd like to play you an example of a couple of such songs right now. Oopsie, sorry. called Mi Chica Flor. I'll take questions later. Is that okay?
Just
Yeah.
making a point. Those little quarter tone I heard.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Yes.
Quarter tone.
We'll talk about this. Yeah. Thank you. So this is a song called Mi Chica Flor. My cute flower. It's a Rebettica song. Rebettica is this wonderful genre of music that started in Smyrna and grew and expanded with the population exchange between Greece and Turkey. It started in Smyrna in like the 1920s, and it became popular in Athens, in Piraeus, and eventually came to the United States. But this is a very typical Smyrnaica, Rebettica song. There are bouzouki, there's kanun. It's very Turkish, urban, Chalgia kind of instrumentation. Hadas Palyardan, the singer, is singing first in Ladino, and then the man is singing in Greek. So this is very typical of the kind of songs that became popular in the 1920s and 30s and 40s in the Ottoman Empire, with this popularity of local songs, where you hear the lyrics sometimes completely in Ladino, or often Ladino and Greek. Or another example that I will play for you is one of Ladino and Turkish. So this song, he's saying, they're saying, "Oh my darling, you're driving me crazy. Just give me one little kiss. Why are you killing me? You're putting me in my grave. You torture me all the time. Oh my chica." It's like that, like your typical "oh I'm something so much" dramatic kind of love song. Yeah, it's blues. So this next song I'm going to play is another example of this hybridity of post-Ottoman Turkish Sephardic song, which was, it's a really big part of the repertoire. It's a very rich, wonderful repertoire, and it's one that my ensemble, we perform a lot of this type of repertoire. This is a really interesting song. It's called Kadifet and Kezesi, His Velvet Wallet. So the first version is Turkish, then there's a Greek version and a Ladino version, but Hadas Palyardan, who's the ethnomusicologist who did research on this song, said like there are endless versions of the song, and my group does it. We do a very sort of heavy Turkish style. She said she met in Jerusalem someone who said, "Oh, you know, this is a Jerusalem song, you know, it's from Jerusalem." She met someone else who said this is an Arabic song. She met someone else from Urfa, right, who said in Turkey, it's like, "Oh no, this is from Urfa." She met someone from Cyprus who said, "No, this is a Cypriot song." So everybody's saying, which is very typical. I found that quite a lot in my own performances, where people will say, "Oh, we have that song in Armenian. We have that song in Turkey. Oh, this is a Greek song. My grandmother sang that. This is a Moroccan song." So it's folk music, right? It's folk music. Folks
And now it's from
share.
California.
Yeah, all the way to California. So it's folk music. So people share this repertoire. I love this song. It's so beautiful. In the beginning, she does some chanting in Hebrew, which I think is not relevant to my talk, so I'm going to skip over that. If you'll excuse me. I'm just going to skip over this. Excuse me. Skip over this. Sorry. She just kind of throws this in there.
I'll go around the other way.
This has nothing to do with the song. But pretty Thank you. Thanks. So this is very heavy, Chalgia, urban, Turkish feeling. You really feel the grooviness, the soulful, heavy grooviness of the song.
kadifeden kesesi kahveden sesi oturmuş kumar oynar ah ciğerimin köşesi aman yolla yolla haydi yolla İstanbul'a yolla
Aman, let's go to Beyoğlu. Aman, let's go to Istanbul.
aman yolla yolla haydi yolla İstanbul'a yolla yolla yan yolla Toprağı difiniyorsun orada Belonar
And the verse is always the same in Turkish. Okay, we'll stop that right now. Anyway, you get the idea.
What was the musical instrument?
So the instrumentation is kanun. Kanun, K-A-N-U-N. I play it. It's a 68-string Middle Eastern trapezoidal zither. I can show you a picture. It's a kind of. You pluck it. It's plucked. And all of them have to be tuned. And it's violin, oud.
Yes.
It's the Turkish urban style. So thank you for pointing that out. Kanun, violin. There's Rick, which I'll play for you. Rick, R-I-Q-Q. I think there's ney in there, N-E-Y, which is the Turkish style flute. Oud. Yeah. So very traditional Turkish çalgıya. It's a style, urban music, which my band does this. I love it. It's so great. Anyway, and you had mentioned the quarter tones. So Michika Flor and the song are in Makam, M-A-Q-A-M or M-A-K-A-M, which is Makam is Middle Eastern musical modal system. And it has microtones, it's microtonal. And it's not just a scale with notes, it also involves, if it's descending or descending, it involves movement, time of day, feeling. The Mozaïn, the Muslim Mozaïn, they sing at different times, at the 5 times a day of the prayer. The call to prayer is in a different maqam. So,
What was the name of this maqam? What was this one? Do you know?
I think this is Bayati. I think it's Bayati. I have to double check though. I think it's Bayati. So, thank you for asking that. Okay, so we have a couple of examples of that really juicy hybridity that flourished in really post-Ottoman music. I'd like to sing a song for you called Bre Sarika Bre. Bre just means come, like hey, Sarika is a diminutive of Sarah. Hey, little Sarah, come, little Sarah. It's an Istanbul urban folk song. The lyrics are roughly, oh, hey, it's a man singing hey, because he's a cute young woman. hey Sarah, come over here, bring me a drink of water. Like, that's a great way to get a girl's attention. Yeah, bring me some water. I'm gonna buy you some shoes from this area, from this area of Istanbul, and I'm gonna buy you trinkets from this other area of Istanbul. And her response is, dude, my father's a really rich merchant, and I don't need your bling, and I don't need nothing from you, so go away. So these are the kind of songs I really love to sing. They're very romantic. There are a lot of them, very romantic songs. What I should say is, and I forgot to say something really important, of course there's liturgical, religious, and paraliturgical, like the Pishnoim, and of course there's liturgical, paraliturgical Sephardic music and song, of course. But the folk songs, the songs for life cycle, bris, marriage, pre-marriage, like the henna songs for henna parties, for death, these songs about love and romance, cooking songs, they're in Ladino. So that's the repertoire. It's the secular repertoire that I've been researching and performing and share with people. That's not to say that the religious and para-religious, paraliturgical music isn't important. It's very, very important, of course, vital to the culture. But I'm not interested in, I like songs like this. And the love songs tend to be very humorous. It's also a tradition. One of the things that really drew me to Sephardic music, because in my real professional life, I read dead white male literature, is that this music is really, it's music that really is a woman's oral tradition. And you can find stories about women's experiences. What is it like to be a young girl in love? What is it like to be a bride about to get married? What does it feel like, for a woman with her relatives and her husband's relatives, watching her as she goes into and gets out of the mikveh, and they're checking her out, What does that feel like? What are lullabies, songs for births of babies, cooking songs, work songs. So these Sephardic songs are not only, to me, very pleasurable musically and aesthetically, but they tell a story. I said we're going on a journey. It tells a story of women's experience, of women's experiences. And that's, I think, what's most dear to my heart in all this music. So I'm going to sing a song, again, it's just me, called Bray Sarita Bray. It's in 7. I have to count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, it's 7/8. It's not in Makam. It's just like normal music. And yeah, this guy trying to hook up with Sarah, and she's like, I don't need you to go away. Okay. turn these odd rhythms, a lot are in 7/8, a lot are in 9/8, because guess what? A lot of Greek folk dances were in that rhythm and Turkish folk songs as well. So it's not just the instrumentation that was borrowed from whatever cultures the Sephardim settled in, but also the musical modes. We talked about makam, M-A-Q-A-M or M-A-K-A-M, depending on how like Turkish or Arabic you want to be. These modal systems and the rhythms, instrumentations, melodies, words, folk songs themselves. So, I wasn't planning on dancing. Wow, I'm a lot of breath. Okay, sorry. So there's another type of song that I would like to share with you. As I said, we have songs for births, lullabies, death, marriage, love, cooking. So songs of the life cycle. There's another song tradition of the Sephardim that are called romances. Romances, or romances, R-O-M-A-N-C-A-S, romances. So a romanza isn't necessarily a romantic song. Sometimes the themes are about love, but a romanza, it's a specific term, song genre term, and it refers to songs in Ladino, Sephardic songs that can trace their roots back to Spanish texts. So, again, there's this whole genre or corpus of Sephardic songs that can trace them back to texts, specifically Spanish texts. And you'll see comparable songs, parallel songs, analogous songs in the troubadour tradition, for example. Like you'll see French folk songs, Spanish folk songs, Sephardic songs, and the theme is usually a woman, and she's looking for her lost love, and he's a prince, and he's gone off to fight, or he's gone to serve the king, or something like that. There's often, with these songs, which I really love, they're ballads, they're very long. They're not folk songs, they go back to Spanish texts, medieval Spanish texts. The songs are very long, and there's often an identity surprise or a shift in identity. That is, there's one where a woman sees a young man and she falls in love with him, and she's like, oh, young man, she's talking to herself, I've seen you, you're so handsome, and I've seen you ride your horse across the hills, and you're so handsome, someday I'll talk to you. So that goes on for like 10 verses, and then it takes her like 5 more verses to actually meet him, and he says, you're my sister. Like there's some questions about identity and where and when and when. So there are a lot of songs like that reveal, okay, so what does that mean? It means this woman she's actually not Jewish, she thinks she's Christian. So she was kidnapped, right? Raised as Christian. So there are a lot of these songs, these romances that have to do with mistaken identity, identities lost and found, and love songs that are very beautiful. I'm going to attempt to sing one, kind of short one. I love the song, it's very beautiful. It's called Ay Mancebo, O Young Man. So gentle, if you're going to France, give greetings to my love. What sign, he says, what sign do you give me, madam, that I may recognize him? She says, he's tall as a pine, straight as a beam of light. He rides a white horse, like the ones the king rides. In his right hand, he carries a lance. Young man, oh young man so gentle, if you're going to France, give greetings to my love. So it's Ay Mancebo. So this is a typical romanza. There's longing, sort of sad, longing, troubadour kind of feeling. I need my frame run, which I don't have, so I'm just going to say it. Ay Mancebo, Ay Mancebo, Ay Mancebo, tan gentil, si para Franza partias, al mi amor saludes, que señal me dabas, que no quiero conocer. derecho como el tener Beneyaca mayo blanco de los que valean el rey en su mano la derecha una lanza lleva Thank you. That's very different. The feeling is very different. It's very Western. It's not in Macomb. It's performed like you have a guitar. Or I'm learning it on pen. So it's a very more familiar Western kind of feeling. But that too is a Sephardic song. So I'd like to move. To Morocco by way of Andalusia. On December 9, 1499, the citizens of Granada awoke to a scene of devastation. The smoldering remains of over 1 million Arabic manuscripts burnt on the orders of the Spanish Inquisition of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. The scale of cultural desecration is difficult to comprehend. It stands alongside the destruction of the Library of Alexandria or the burning of the Mayan codices by conquistadors. 1,000 years ago, much of Europe languished in the Dark Ages. The Iberian Peninsula, however, was a cultural oasis for a time, a bright beacon of civilization. Under the Umayyad dynasty, the Caliphate of Al-Andalus stretched from Lisbon to Zaragoza and centered on the Andalusian cities of Córdoba, Granada, and Sevilla from the 8th century. The Caliphate oversaw a period of extraordinary cross-cultural creativity known as La Convivencia. La Convivencia, the coexistence, the living together. And those of us who play Moroccan music, Sephardic music, Andalusian music, specifically Andalusian music, Middle Eastern music, we all are trying to create a convivencia because we play. I'm Jewish, I'm part Sephardic. I've been playing music for over 30 years with Palestinians, Armenians, Israelis, Turks, Jews, Arabs, everybody. And we all, Iranians, and we all, Iraqis, Yemenis, we all embrace and love each other's music. So this convivencia, it was a thing of the past in Andalusian Spain. It gets romanticized, yes, it does, but it did exist. And those of us who play Middle Eastern music, who play music of the other, music not just of our own selves, but music of the other, we are trying in our lifetimes to create a new convivencia. But this really did exist in Spain, in Andalusia. And as I mentioned, we've been in Turkey most of the time, in Ottoman Turkey in the beginning of the Republic. But remember, the Sephardim went to, in the south, to Morocco. There's this incredible culture of Andalusian Moroccan music. It's not just Arabic and Sephardic, but it's also Amazigh, which is, it's Berber, but Berber is like, it's like the Roman word for barbarian. It's like, so the Amazigh prefer to be called Amazigh. So Amazigh of the indigenous people of Morocco and Algeria and Atlas Mountains. There's that tradition, there's the African tradition, because after all, it's North Africa. There's Arabic tradition, Spanish tradition, and of course the Sephardim went there, and there are still a number, I don't know the numbers of Sephardim in North Africa, particularly in Morocco. So this music is so rich and so special. The maqams, the modal systems that they use, it's not Arabic or Turkish maqam. They do their own, they have their own modal systems. It's not maqam, it's like Moroccan. Of course they have their own dialect language. If you study Arabic, if you speak Egyptian, if you learn Egyptian Arabic, that's not Moroccan Arabic. It's like a different language, different, really strong, different dialect. The rhythms are usually what's really distinctive about Andalusian Moroccan rhythms is the 6/8. So like that, but they play, and I play them, but I don't do them on the plane, these frame drums. So you'll see some in the video I'll show in a minute. We'll show in a
Then
minute.
it's the combination of the,
And they clap, yes, so they clap. Right, start with clapping, but it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Keep clapping, it's different, right? It kind of feels like you're riding on a horse. You feel like it's like you're capturing on a horse or something. It's very fluid, it's very moving, it's very flowing, very moving kind of rhythm. So everything about Moroccan Andalusian music is different, it's special, it's unique. I'm so enamored of it, I love it so much. And I'm trying to find more Sephardic music in Ladino. And of course, there's a lot of Sephardic music in Arabic and in Hebrew. And there's a genre, I don't know if you'll be talking about it tomorrow, called washahat. So washahat, it's Andalusian tradition. It's a 10-syllable poem. Washahat, they're 10-syllable poems and they rhyme at the end. It's a very old tradition, and they're washahat, which are recited and sung in Arabic and in Hebrew. Very, very strong tradition. And that alone is worth a lifetime of study of the washahat tradition. So they're washahat in Arabic, they're washahat in Hebrew. It's like, wow. I haven't found any washahat in Ladino. If they existed, it would be something, I think, it would be contrafacta. But that's okay, because we're in the era of contrafacta, right? So, very, very beautiful music. So, my favorite singer, I have many singers whom I just love and adore and would love to meet someday. My favorite singer is Françoise Atlan. Françoise Atlan, she is French Moroccan Sephardic. She's been singing since she was a teenager. She's in her 50s now, and she performs regularly. She performs at the Fez Sacred Music Festival, so it's my dream to go to the Fez Sacred Music Festival in Morocco and hear her and see her. She's just the most beautiful singer ever. She grew up, of course, she's Jewish, so she grew up Sephardic, speaking Ladino, French, and Arabic, and Hebrew. She studied traditional Arabic singing, and what you'll hear, I'm going to play a couple of examples of my favorite singer, Françoise Atlan, singing, and then we will have time for questions at the end. The first example is Françoise Atlan with the Andalusian Female Moroccan Orchestra. So if you think that, like in the Arab world, women just like sit around and they try to drive and don't do anything, that's not true. There are women musicians. There are whole orchestras just of women. So I love this video because you see all the women playing all the traditional instruments. For the violinist here, they play the violin kemençe style, which is they hold it, you see they hold it on their lap and play this way. Style of the kemençe, which is an old Persian style violin. You'll see it opens with a kanun, a young, fabulous kanun player. That's the instrument that I decided at 60, okay, I'm gonna start kanun. I don't know what I was thinking, but why not? So she's a really good kanun player. Françoise Atlan, she does something called a mawal. A mawal is vocal improvisation. So another characteristic of Arabic and Turkish and Moroccan music, which you do hear in some Sephardic music that's really trying to imitate that style, are improvisations. So when a musician, an instrumentalist, improvises, it's called a takasim. Taksim. Taksim, a takasim. It's an improvisation, but he or she can't just do whatever they want. They have to be in maqam, so they have to stay in that modal system. It's not free jazz. It's within a very strict maqam modal system. When a singer does a vocal improvisation, it's called a mawal. A mawal. So, Françoise Atlan mawals are They're beautiful. It's very Arabic style, very Arabic. So here we have Francois Zafon singing Los Bilbilicos, which some of you might know. Okay, it's a secular, this is interesting, fusion or hybridity. It's a secular Sephardic song. The nightingales are singing in the month of May. They're singing all who are lonely and lovelorn, all who are sad because of love. You know, sit beneath the tree, listen to the nightingales singing. Come, my love, come, my darling, come, my dove, come and rescue me. So it's kind of like one of these needy rescue me kind of songs, but I really like it. And what's interesting about this song, Los Bilbilicos, is it's sung to the Sephardic melody for Tzur Mishalo. Now, who knows Tzur Mishalo, the Ashkenazi melody? Do you want to sing it? Beautiful, bravo, thank you. Probably from a German European song, probably.
So Zumi Shalom was first, then came the other lyrics? I thought it was the other way around.
No, the Tzur Mishalo came first,
Really?
I believe. Yeah, I believe so, just using
What
my
does it mean?
logical brain.
Tzur Mishalo, do you know?
Tzur Mishalo, it's, what's the translation? My English is terrible.
We have eaten from the rock of Israel.
Oh, the rock of
Gratitude for
Israel.
food that didn't-
Zumi Shalom, so she ate from the rock.
The rock, right. So it's a Sephardic table, it's a Shabbos table song. Some of these. This version, you'll recognize it, it's beautiful. She's singing Los Bilbilicos, but she gets to it, she does a mobile first, and there's beautiful instrumental inflections. So I really want you to hear this Andalusian, which is like Arabic, Andalusian, gorgeous music. And then she'll sing the secular version of Los Bilbilicos. Are we ready?
Yay, we're ready.
Go ahead.
Yeah, all right, okay. That's it. So I'd like to leave maybe like 5 minutes for questions, but I'd like to end my talk, 5 minutes. Wait. So we've been on a journey. I said I was taking on a journey, a Sephardic journey from Spain to the Ottoman Empire, to Morocco, Andalusia, and I'd like to end the Ottoman Empire with scenes from Ensemble and Salonika. I mentioned that the numbers of Sephardim, about 80,000 Jewish people in Salonika, 50,000 in Istanbul, 20,000 in Izmir. So, of course, during World War II, the Sephardic populations of those cities were decimated. I visited Salonika in 1998, and I met with people who grew up there, who were survivors, who were hidden, people who were hidden in the mountains. And there were, 20 years ago, there were about 1,000 people. And of course, there are Sephardim in Los Angeles, Seattle, Israel, of course, so many Sephardim in Israel. But I'd like to end with a video with Françoise Batman, she's my favorite singer, singing a song called Entarash Ajenas. I'd like to just introduce it. And there are scenes from paintings and postcards of Jewish life of the Ottoman Empire, mostly. So before she sings the song, and we'll have a couple of, I'm sorry, I have the lyrics here. It's very moving. Trees cry for rain, mountains cry for the winds, and my eyes cry for you, my dear beloved. Come, you'll see, and come, you'll see, and come, you'll see, and yes, we'll see. The love we two have, come, we'll become one. The love we two have, come, we will wed.
So when we put the link in, it came up at 153. Do you want to start at the beginning? So if you see it's at 153, and do you want to start at the beginning or where?
At the beginning, please.
Maybe